Hey guys, welcome to this short little tutorial series on how to model roofs as well as produce detailed takeoffs on our roof elements. We're going to start basic here in this first video, talking about just kind of how to set up a takeoff report, as well as some different geometry methods for single planes versus multi-planes. We're really going to focus a lot on the different roof edge types. So we'll get into all that in more detail here in a moment. But in the next few videos after this, we'll be talking more about these profiled steel shapes, as well as the roof surfacer, which can be pretty useful for generating different profiles on our roofing and get them to generate automatically. So again, we'll start out simple, then we'll get into our sheet metal profiles, and then we'll get into our surfacer. But for this first video, I really want to start by just actually doing a quick review of our roof element and the information that we can extract from it just right out of the gate. So one of the first things that I like doing sometimes is just going into our palettes and pulling up our element information palette here. And so this is a really useful way of just kind of always going in and quickly getting a snapshot of what type of takeoff values and parameters we have associated with these, in this case, this roof, but it works for all different types of design tools and objects that we have. So one thing I want to highlight here is we have with this roof under our element height here, you can go through and turn off these different values and you can get different feedback from your selection here. But under our height, we have these different lengths that we can pull out. So notice we have a ridge length, valley length, gables, hips, eaves, peaks. We also have sidewall connections, end wall connections, dome connection, hollow connection lengths. And so we have all these different takeoff values that we can use and assign. And by using these, we can actually go in and pick and choose which ones we want to reference. So to show you a quick intro into how we can get into these, when we click on our roof edge, we have this option right here under our pet palette for custom edge settings. And so within here, we can go through and pick and choose which edge types we are assigning to these different faces of our roof. So so in this case, this would obviously be this would be an eave. It would actually be more of like, I would describe this more as like a fascia being on the bottom part of our roof, but we'll assign it to our eaves in this case. And so as soon as we hit OK, you'll see that our eave length in this case has now been assigned to 4 feet. And so that's how we can go through and set these up. So we can do this again with this edge connection. We can go in and we can assign it, in this case, maybe like a gable. And so you can see that we can now populate these with by clicking and assigning that edge type. So we can't really modify the naming on these. Like for example, eaves, we can't change this value to fascia, but we can always override that in our takeoff reports, where we can define this how we want to use it. We just need to know which ones we are referencing those takeoff values too. So okay, that brings us to the next section of this video, and that's going to be actually creating a new takeoff report. So in this case, for an element like this, I would prefer to use an element type versus a components or surfaces. These can be useful for other types of takeoffs, but when we're talking about sheet metal roofing, we'll want to just start with our elements, and we can go create a new schedule. So our ID here, I'm just going to give this SMR for sheet metal roofing to begin. We'll just call this sheet metal roofing, and we'll hit OK. And so there we go. We've created a new schedule. Now it's time to go through and actually set up our criteria and then what fields or parameters we want to list onto this schedule. So when it comes to criteria here, I'm just going to actually hit OK. So we've created that schedule. There's nothing on it yet. If we go to it, you'll see that there shouldn't be really anything because we haven't specified anything. And we can see that it's just listing a blank schedule here. So so when it comes down to setting the criteria, it's good to go through and just understand what available parameters we have to kind of dial into. It's really always been my preference to use as simple criteria as possible for getting these to be reported. So I often kind of default back to using properties that I set up. Of course, we could use layers here, but in this case for pitched roofs, maybe we have multiple types of pitched roofs on our project and we only want to dial this in for like a sheet metal roof. And so I always tend to lean on properties for setting these up, because we can just go in here and we can kind of pick and choose what properties we want to use. And yeah, in this case we can set this up where we just essentially pull a CSI code for flashing and sheet metal. And if we also want, we can go in and create a unique value within here for dialing in this criteria even further. So let's start here. We can go into our scheme settings actually just by right clicking on the tab up here on top. Let's go in here and let's just start by using an identification property. And so I'm just going to go in here, I'm just going to assign it to a flashing and sheet metal criteria. And then one of the most basic parameters that we can list here is going to be like our element ID. So let's just start with that and see what we get on our report. So, okay, we can see that we have a lot of different content coming through. If you double click on these, if you see up here at the top, there's like these little dividers. We can either pull this out or we can double click on it and it's going to open it up so we can see everything. But you'll notice this is pulling through essentially everything that we have in our little setup here. So we don't want that. We want to really at this point, what I want to do is I just want to highlight just this particular one, so we can go in and provide just one individual value here. It could be any parameter that we choose. It just needs to be unique. And so we're just going to call this like part 1 as part of this schedule phase. And so I can take this, copy it. We'll go to our scheme settings here, add that criteria under, it was under a schedule where we added this. And so we just set this as part 1, and then by doing that, it should go through and just filter down our content so that we have just that single element. A few other things we can do here. We can show this as a headline if we wanted, but we really need multiple values in our report first. We can freeze our schedule header, but let's go in and start expanding on some of our takeoff values here. So if we go to our scheme settings, we only have our element ID, but let's go in and take this a little bit further. So I always like working with some of our basic or our general parameters to begin with. In this case, it would be good to look at like the area versus our surface area would be another one that would be good for those general parameters. We can go in and under our roof settings here, we can start getting in and pulling out different parts and pieces. Little tip here, you can see that we have a ton of different parameters available. If you go in and you change your element type and filter this down to the element type you want to really focus on. We know that we're currently working with a roof, so that's fine. But you'll see down here when we go to add these fields, it now just filtered this down to only available parameters relating to that element type. So that's one way of just simplifying the list of available parameters. So, okay, let's go in. I definitely want to get all those different lengths that we were talking about. So our eave length would be a good one, our gable length, our hip length, peaks, the pitch would be useful, ridges, valleys. What else am I missing here? Sidewall connection, end wall connection. Definitely want to get like our net surface area of the top would be like our sheet metal takeoff value. We could always do like conditionals if we wanted to cut out some holes and only have it include some versus others. But for right now, I think that's probably a pretty good starting point. I'm just trying to think, is there anything else we're missing here? We'll probably leave off our hollow connection lengths for now. And okay, I think I'm happy with that. So let's just do a little bit of reorganization on this. I like having the pitch up top. I like having our net surface area up top here. Actually, we'll put this right there. I'm going to move our pitch up as well. And then I always like just kind of starting with like the most important ones and going down to the least important. So the eaves length is definitely an important one. The peaks and ridges, our gables, hips, and valleys, those are all very useful. I'm actually going to move our gables up. So we have eaves, gables, peaks, ridges, hips, valleys, and then our sidewall and our end wall connections. So okay, let's go ahead and roll with this. All right, so one thing here, if I wanted to kind of readjust some of the sizing on this, I'll unfreeze this in order to take these and pull them down. You can always just click on in one of these, and then if you unwrap and then wrap again, it will actually go through and resize that. So then we can go in and just freeze the header again. But once you freeze it, you can't adjust the sizing on that. We can always go over here and we can click, or we can show our headline now that we have multiple values, but in this case, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to do so. But we can click on this little arrow and get a little bit more space here. I can always go in and like turn off the info box to get a little bit more real estate if we wanted. We could also turn off our organizer as well. But if you click on this little option down here, this little flyout, you can filter the zoom, or you can just go to fit the width here. So okay, so now we are really starting to get this report coming through. We have this one light item with our pitch, our area. Notice the difference between our area and our surface area. Surface area was the general parameters that equals the same as our net surface area on the top. So though we can pick and choose one or the other in this case. The area is going to be just the kind of the area that we see the projection on the floor plan. So for our surface area of our roof finish, that is not necessarily the one we want. We definitely would want to use one of these. But we've already gone through and set our eave length and our gable length. We have not set our peaks or ridges or any of these others. But we can certainly do that and expand on those in this exercise we're about to get into here. So okay, we've definitely jumped in and covered quite a bit there in terms of our reporting. So let's see here. We talked about criteria, fields, and the roof edge type. So now let's get in and really start taking this, and I have a little kind of sample project here that we can go through and create some different roofing applications here. So let's do a single plane here. We'll do kind of a mitered roof down here, and then we'll do a multi-plane roof on the top. So let's start here. We can actually just start by taking this. We'll pick up the settings, and then we'll come in here and let's turn on our info box here so we can see. So we'll start here with just a single plane geometry. We'll click here, and so we're going to define our pitch line, and then we can just go in and we can draw the shape of our roof. So I'm just going to take this, pull it all the way over, and then we're going to take these edges, and I'm just going to offset these edges like 2 feet in this direction, maybe 1 foot in this direction. Maybe we'll go 1 foot in this direction. So okay, there we go. Let's pick this up, see how we're looking. Okay, so we can go through, we can select all of our walls here, and let's just trim them. So right click, crop to single plane roof. Whenever I'm doing this, I like clicking this little option to set the wall height to the highest point. So you'll see what it does with this particular wall right here. When we crop it, it's actually going to take it and change the overall height so that it's now lowered. So that's a nice clean little way of just going through and getting those working. And so okay, so here we go. We have this standing seam roof. I'm just going to give this like a -1 so that we know which value or which roof this is. And let's go to our report here. So okay, there we go. We can see that coming through, but we can also see none of our takeoff values have been assigned. So at this point, we want to go through and we definitely want to assign those. So again, we can assign them just by clicking the edge. We'll assign this as our eaves. We'll assign this one on our edge as, it's essentially going to be like our barge, or in this case, it's the gable portion of the roof. And then we can click on this top line. I'm going to change my view because it's a little bit tough to see which one I might be clicking on, so we'll adjust that. So this would be our ridge. And then over here we have the option of assigning this as this would be like our sidewall or end wall. Probably in this case I would call this more of a sidewall, but we can pick and choose which ones we want. So okay, there we go. We've assigned our 4 different edges, and now we can see we have those all coming through here as our eaves, our gables, our ridge, and our sidewall connection. So if we wanted to go through and do some checks here, let's check that ridge length as an example. So one thing to note is, okay, what's happening there? So see how it was 11 feet versus 22 feet? So that's something we need to be aware of, is just how these different values are going to be taken off. So when we go over here, we can check and see, okay, so our ridges, that's an issue. That's not a right value here. What if we assigned it to our peaks instead? Let's check that. So let's go back. Let's reassign this. So we're going to we're going to click. And instead of assigning it to a ridge, let's assign it to a peak. And we'll go back and check. So, okay, look at that. There's a correct value. So that's one thing that we always need to be aware of, is just how these are being calculated, whether it's a peak or a length, or sorry, a ridge. And so in this next portion here, you'll really see why it's doing that. And there's certain values and there's certain takeoffs here that it actually is going to want to take those numbers and divide them by 2, because it's going to assume different pieces are coming together. But we'll see that here in this next exercise here. So what I'm going to do is we'll just kind of pick up the settings on this element. We're going to go up 1 story. And so now we're going to be modeling, essentially we'll be modeling here on our roof level. And so we are, assigning this to our roof. And instead of using a single plane, let's go straight into a multi-plane. I'm going to go down. Okay, we got a good offset already there. So let's just click and let's see. We'll add it on our top plate here. So, okay, so there we go. This is now one individual roof that we have here. So it's not single planes anymore. But what's interesting with this is, if we go into our palettes and we check our element information, you can see that automatically we are already getting these values calculated for us. So, so that's awesome. And when you use that method, it already is going to identify our ridges. It's going to identify our hips. In this case, our hips are going to be these values right here. Our ridge is this one at the very top. And then we also have our eaves lengths. So it's taking all of them and getting our total length there. So if we do a few checks on this, our ridge, 7'9", 7'10", so that's a correct number. If we take our our hips here, you can see that our length is 14'8", but this was in plan view, so it would actually be a little bit over that, including the slope. So that checks out. And of course, our perimeter on this, if we click all the way around, that should be a good number as well. And so there we go. We can see our cumulative here, 98.7. So yes, that's a good value as well. So okay, so when we go here, we can see all of these, and you'll notice that it actually breaks them all out for us. I'm going to take this. We're going to call this 2, just so that we are really clear on which ones are which. But yeah, you can see that it's already breaking these down into individual elements for us. And what's interesting with this is it's actually going through, and like for our ridges now, it's actually going through and it's taking these values and it's splitting it so that we have half the length on one roof and half on the other. So it's actually the same thing here with our hips. Actually, yeah, with our hips. So we look at one of these, and obviously, actually one thing we can do here is let's go ahead and we'll just split these into single plane roofs. Okay, and so now when we select one, we can see that, okay, yes, our ridge length is 3.9 feet. And when we do a measurement here, it's taking that value and splitting it exactly in half. Same thing with a hip here. So our hip is 15.41 or 15.4. You'll notice that we are measuring it on one side here, but there's actually hips on both sides with this roof. So it automatically goes through and calculates these so that we are only picking up the values that are merged with other roof elements. So it's nice that it automatically knows how to do that, but that's really going to be the main difference here between our peaks and our ridges, and some of these other takeoff values that we can assign. So lots of flexibility there, but it automatically defaults to the right value from the beginning, which is nice. So, okay, let's continue on here. There's just one more example that I want to do. And so it's going to be this kind of single plane jointed section down below here. And so what we'll do is we'll pick up the roof here. I'm going to assign this as a 3 for the moment. And then we'll just go in, we'll set our ridge line. Sorry, we need to set our geometry method first. So we'll set our ridge line. I'm going to just kind of click here and we're going to, we'll bring it to this point. We'll do the same thing from down here. So we're setting our pivot line, I should say, and we're going to snap this to right there. And then of course we can take these points and we can drag them all the way out. And so with this here, there's a little trick that if you want to merge these, you can click on one, click on the other, and then hold down Control and click on the first. And so that you'll notice that that actually merged those together for us, which is a really nice way of getting these set up. And then of course we can go through and we can give ourselves just a little bit of an offset here. So 2 feet in that direction, 2 feet in this direction. Maybe we'll go 1 foot on our on that section. And then in order to really get all of these coming through for our takeoffs, let's go back here and just look at these. So let's do this. Let's actually turn on our header, show headline. So now you can see this was our little sample. This was the first one. This is the second one. And so this is our third. And with this, once again, we don't have any of our takeoff values for eaves, gables, or our edge condition. So we need to go through and do those. We can actually select these in 3D by either clicking on an individual one here. So this will take us to that individual, or we can also select based off our headline here. We can select both of them at once, which is nice. Oh, I can actually see obviously our roof here is not at the right elevation. So let's take this up. And we can either, we can just snap it right up there. That would work. So with this wall, we would definitely want to take this and we can extend our height so that we are filling that part in. So we can overextend it in this case, and then we can do a crop to single plane roof. And if we check that option, it's going to automatically bring it down and set that top height to the top height where it merges. So, okay, we are almost done here. So, so we got a few things that we want to assign here. So you'll notice that we don't have, well, first of all, let's start with the easy one. So we know down here, this is going to be our eaves. So we'll assign that. This will be our sidewall connection. Okay. We can assign this one up here as, we got a few different options here. We can assign it as either a peak in this case, or we could also assign it as an end wall connection. So let's do that for the moment and just kind of double check our takeoff value here. So we're right at 6'4" for the length there. And you can see our end wall connection that's a correct takeoff value. It's not splitting that one in half, which is good. So I definitely like that. The other part here that we need to accommodate is going to be our ridge. So when we click on this, we can go in, sorry, it's not our ridge, it's our hip. And so we assign this, and when we click on this here, our total length is 17'6" almost. But you can see that's already cutting this in half, so that's good because we're going to be doing the exact same thing with this roof as well. So we click here, this is going to be our hip, and then we can just simply go through and finish out the rest of these. This is our eave. This would be our gable or barge. And then once again, if we're being consistent with this top connection, this would be our end wall connection. Okay, so there we go. We have all of these assigned. And yeah, let's check out our takeoffs here. So once again, we can check our third option here. So yes, we have our eaves coming through. We have our gable length that only occurred on that one side. The other side, we had our sidewall connection. And then our end wall connection was up there at the ridge. So if we wanted to sum all these up, we can just simply go through and we just click on our sum right here. We want to do that for our surface area as well. And so we can just go through and click all of these, and that's going to do our total takeoff. So let's do this. So our grand total here, we can go through, we can give it a little bit of a different formatting. So we can turn off our lines there. We can double click on some of these to get them to look a little bit cleaner. What else can we do? I think if we, let's see, if we flag our top line item, this is going to actually break it down into these different segments. So that's another way of summing this up. And then this becomes our grand total at the bottom. So we can bold that one up. We can go through and we can give it a little bit more separation. So we can insert a separator row. So that's going to break it out just a little bit more. This is our total here. So we can give this a little bit different formatting as well. Maybe we change our color there. And so we can just quickly go through and format these. If we don't want to see all these lines, we can change our cell borders or we can turn it off. So lots of different ways that we can go through and adjust these. But yeah, that's starting to look pretty good. And that is a lot of different takeoffs here for different conditions. And I'm definitely liking this quick little workflow here. So yeah, if you have any questions on any of this, then yeah, just leave it in the comment section. We are going to be back here with some more videos on those other, a little bit more detailed geometry for the surfacing there. So yeah, we'll definitely take this to the next level in the next few videos. But for now, yeah, let me know if you have any questions, and we will catch you on another video here soon. So if you like this type of content, definitely make sure to subscribe, and that way you get all of our videos directly in your notifications. And yeah, once again, let me know if you have any questions. We'll catch you here on the next video.